You're making breakfast. You crack an egg into a pan, and a tiny, jagged piece of the shell falls in. You spend the next 3 minutes chasing it around with a spatula, fail, give up, and eventually just eat it. Congratulations. You just ate a rock, and you didn't die. Which begs the question, could you just eat the whole thing? It is a universally accepted rule of society that eggshells are garbage. The moment the gooey inside is out, the outside goes directly into the trash. It feels like plastic, shatters like glass, and tastes like a very disappointing piece of unflavored sand. But chemically, an eggshell is a completely different story. It is almost entirely made of calcium carbonate. If you ever took a high school chemistry class, you might recognize calcium carbonate as the exact same compound that makes up chalk, limestone, seashells, and marble. Yes, on a molecular level, eating an eggshell is basically identical to taking a bite out of the Taj Mahal. If you grind up an eggshell, it leaves the exact same white, dusty residue on your hands as a piece of classroom chalk. But please do not try to write on a chalkboard with an egg. It won't work, you'll look stupid, and your teacher will call security. Now, your body actually loves calcium. It uses it to build bones, flex muscles, and keep your heart beating so you can continue watching internet videos. The average human adult needs about 1,000 milligrams of calcium a day to keep their skeleton from turning into dust. If you look at a standard chicken egg, the shell alone contains roughly 2,000 milligrams of pure calcium. That means half of a single eggshell has enough calcium to fulfill your entire daily requirement. It is literally a natural vitamin pill that comes completely free with your breakfast. But before you start biting into raw eggs like a cartoon villain, there are a few massive problems. First, raw eggshells are famously covered in bacteria, most notably salmonella, which is a fantastic way to spend a week in the bathroom reconsidering your life choices. Second, if you just chew on a raw shell, it will shatter into dozens of tiny, razor-sharp daggers that will absolutely shred your throat and esophagus on the way down. This is generally considered bad for your health. Speaking of things that are incredibly fragile and desperately need your support, please subscribe to this almost dead YouTube channel before the algorithm finally puts it out of its misery. Anyway, if you actually want to eat eggshells, you have to do some light manufacturing. First, you have to boil the empty shells to violently eliminate the bacteria. Then, you have to bake them in an oven at around 200 degrees for about 15 minutes. This dries them out and makes them incredibly brittle. Finally, you throw them into a coffee grinder or a blender and pulverize them into a fine, white powder. Congratulations, you've just made a highly concentrated calcium supplement for $0. People actually do this. It's incredibly popular in the homesteading community, and a lot of people mix this powder into their dog's food to keep their pets' bones healthy. Now, you might be thinking, why on earth would anyone go through the trouble of baking and grinding garbage just to eat it? Well, during times of extreme poverty, like the Great Depression, people actually used eggshells all the time. They didn't necessarily eat them straight, but they would crush them up and throw them into their cheap, boiling coffee. The highly alkaline nature of the calcium carbonate neutralized the intense acidity of the cheap coffee beans, making a terrible cup of coffee taste slightly less terrible. Plus, it gave them a massive nutrient boost during a time when getting vitamins was a luxury. But here is where things get weird. The shell itself isn't even the most valuable part you're throwing away. Have you ever tried to peel a hard-boiled egg, only to have half the egg white stubbornly stick to the shell? That's because of the eggshell membrane, that thin, transparent, skin-like film stuck to the inside. It turns out, that annoying little film is a biological goldmine. It is densely packed with collagen, glucosamine, and chondroitin. If those sound familiar, it's because they are the exact same shockingly expensive ingredients sold in pharmacies to cure joint pain and arthritis. The supplement industry literally buys commercial eggshells by the ton, extracts that tiny membrane, puts it in little plastic bottles, and sells it back to you for $30. And here's the other twist. Let's say you do make your own eggshell powder and start scooping it into your smoothies. You need to be incredibly careful, because your body is lazy. When you consume purely concentrated calcium, your body absorbs it very quickly, creating a massive spike of calcium in your bloodstream. Your kidneys, which act as your body's bouncers, look at this massive influx of calcium and say, absolutely not. They filter it out. Here is where the math gets dangerous. Medical experts strongly advise keeping your absolute maximum calcium intake under 2,500 milligrams a day. Since one single eggshell packs about 2,000 milligrams, eating just 1.5 of these things puts you over the absolute limit. If there is constantly too much calcium in your system, those little molecules start clumping together inside your kidneys. Over time, they solidify into a rock. Yes, by aggressively eating eggshells to make your bones stronger, you can accidentally build a completely new, incredibly painful rock inside your own internal organs, otherwise known as a kidney stone. But if you dose it correctly, it's miraculously effective. Clinical studies have shown that the calcium from crushed eggshells is actually absorbed by the human body roughly 20% better than the expensive, purified calcium supplements you buy at the store. Why? Because the eggshell still contains natural trace amounts of magnesium, boron, and zinc, which work together to usher the calcium directly into your bones. So, what have we learned? Every year, the global commercial food industry throws away around 8 million tons of eggshells. That is the equivalent weight of about 22 Empire State Buildings. Food processors pay millions of dollars in landfill fees just to legally dump them. And as the membranes break down in those landfills, they release hydrogen sulfide, which means we are paying small fortunes to bury medicine in the ground so it can smell aggressively like rotten eggs. And yet, this garbage is actually a highly concentrated, fully edible source of essential human nutrients, provided you are willing to boil, bake, and grind it into dust to avoid a hospital visit. So, next time a tiny piece of shell falls into your morning omelette, don't panic, and definitely don't spend 5 minutes trying to fish it out. Just eat it. Think of it as free healthcare.